Welcome to the Copperfield Electric podcast. Right now, hiding just about half an inch behind the drywall of your living room, there is enough raw energy to stop a human heart.
Yeah, or honestly burn a house right down to its foundation.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild when you actually stop and think about it.
it really is. I mean, we tame literal lightning with just like thin layers of plastic and copper wire, right?
Yeah.
And we just trust that it's going to stay inside the walls.
Exactly. But for some reason, despite that massive danger, a lot of homeowners will look at an electrical issue and just think, I can probably figure that out with a screwdriver and a couple of YouTube videos.
Yeah, people are so confident. And which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are tackling a question that sounds super straightforward, but is actually like a total maze of legal and physical traps.
Oh, absolutely. It's a minefield.
Right. So the question is, can you legally and safely wire your own house without hiring an electrician? And look, whether you are a really confident DIYer trying to save some serious cash, or you're just, staring at an intimidating, humming electrical panel, wondering if you're even allowed to touch it, we are going to break down the exact boundaries you need to know.
And we've got some great material to work from today for this.
We do. We are pulling from two really solid sources. First is this heavily detailed article by Renee Hernandez. It's titled, "Can You Wire a House Without an Electrician?" And second, we have the official service and background guidelines of Copperfield Electric.
Yeah, they're a top-rated, family-owned electrical company serving Southern California, so they really know what they're talking about.
For sure. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the legal side. Because reading the Hernandez article, in the state of California, the answer to, can I wire my own house, is actually yes.
I know, it's crazy. Most people assume it's just an outright ban, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually surprisingly lenient on paper.
Yeah, I definitely assumed it was illegal. So how does this work?
Well, it falls under something called the owner-builder exemption. You'll find this tucked away in California's Business and Professions Code, Section 7044.
Section 7044. Got it.
Yeah, and the fundamental philosophy from the state here is that if it is your own property, you basically have the right to act as your own contractor. You don't need to spend years getting a professional C10 electrical contractor's license just to work on your own living room.
Okay, I can already hear people firing up their power tools right now. But there have to be massive guardrails here, right? I mean, the state can't just let anyone buy a commercial warehouse and start running high-voltage industrial lines.
Oh, no, not at all. The guardrails are actually very strict, and they're designed specifically to box out commercial activity.
So what are the rules?
First off, this exemption only applies to a single-family primary residence. You have to actually live there. Or, well, at the very least, you have to genuinely intend to occupy the home once the construction is done.
Okay, so no investment properties. But how do they prove that you intend to live there?
Right. To prove that intent, the law states you must have resided there for the 12 months prior to the completion of the work.
Wait, hold on. What if I buy a fixer-upper, right? And I do all the electrical work myself, totally by the book. But then, 6 months later, I get a new job across the country and I have to sell the place. Why would the state care? I mean, I wasn't trying to pull a fast one. I just had to move.
Well, the state cares because they are aggressively trying to prevent unlicensed developers from buying distressed properties, doing cheap, unpermitted work themselves, and then just instantly flipping them for a massive profit.
Ah, okay. The house flipping trap.
Exactly. So if you sell that house within 1 year of completing your DIY electrical work, the law really doesn't care about your new job. It automatically presumes you built or improved that house for the purpose of resale.
Wow, so I just become an illegal house flipper by default in the eyes of the law.
You do. Yeah, it shifts the burden of proof entirely onto you.
That's terrifying.
It is. If the new buyer finds a problem and files a dispute, you now have to go to court and prove to the state of California that you didn't do the work just to flip it. And trying to prove a negative in court is incredibly difficult.
I can imagine. And if you lose?
If you lose, you are treated as an unlicensed commercial contractor. The financial penalties can be absolutely devastating. Oh, and by the way, this exemption completely excludes rental units.
Really? Even if I own the building?
Yep. Even if you have a tenant who wants to upgrade their apartment and you give them your blessing as the landlord, they cannot use this exemption. It is strictly for the owner-occupant.
Man, that feels like a trap a lot of well-meaning people could easily fall into. But okay, let's say I meet all the criteria. I've lived here for 5 years. I'm never leaving. This exemption means I don't need a license, which in my mind means I don't need to get the city involved. So I can just bypass the red tape and start pulling wires, right?
And that assumption right there is the single biggest misconception in DIY home improvement.
Oh, really? So I do still need the city.
100%. The owner-builder exemption removes the requirement to hold a professional license. It does absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing to remove the permit requirement or the inspection requirement.
Oh, wow. So I still have to file paperwork.
Yes. If you are changing a panel, running a new circuit, or doing any kind of rewire, you are legally required to pull a permit with your city's building department.
Yeah.
And when that city inspector shows up, they're going to hold your amateur weekend project to the exact same rigorous microscopic code standard as they would for a veteran professional.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we are moving from the state giving you legal permission to the physical reality of what electricity actually is.
Oh, exactly.
Because the law says you are allowed to pull the permit, but the law says absolutely nothing about whether you actually possess the skill to make that wiring safe.
Which is the core danger here. Being legally permitted to do something and being physically capable of doing it safely, those are completely divorced from one another.
Right, because electricity doesn't care about your permit.
No, it doesn't. And the National Electrical Code, the NEC, it isn't just a list of friendly suggestions. It is hundreds of pages long. It's incredibly dense. It gets updated every 3 years. And on top of that, local municipalities will layer their own specific amendments right over the national rules.
You know, I always look at building codes and just think they are bureaucratic red tape, basically just designed to extract permit fees from homeowners. But they aren't arbitrary, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
There's this saying in the industry that the building code is written in the ashes of burned down houses.
Oof, that's dark.
It is, but it's true. Every rule, every clearance requirement, every wire gauge specification, it all exists because someone, somewhere, did it the wrong way and it ended in a tragedy. The code is basically a historical document of fatal mistakes.
That puts it in a totally different perspective. So let's get into the mechanics of those mistakes. Because a lot of people watch a 5-minute video online and think, I'm just matching the black wire to the black wire and the white wire to the white wire. Like, how hard can it actually be?
Yeah, that oversimplification is exactly what causes fires hidden behind drywall. Let's look at a very common DIY mistake inspectors see all the time: mismatched wires and breakers.
Okay, how does that happen?
So, say you decide you want to add a heavy-duty power tool in your garage, right? So you install a 20-amp circuit breaker in the panel, but you use standard 14-gauge wire to run the power to the outlet instead of the thicker 12-gauge wire that the code strictly requires for a 20-amp circuit.
But if the power still turns on and the tool runs fine, most people would just dust off their hands and call it a success. What is actually happening inside the wall there?
Well, the physical reality is that the wire gauge, which is the thickness of the copper, determines how much electrical current it can safely carry without overheating.
Right, thicker wire, more current.
Exactly. A 20-amp breaker allows a high volume of current to flow before its internal mechanisms say, that's too much, and trip to cut the power. But your thin 14-gauge wire cannot physically handle that volume of electricity.
Because it just gets hot.
Oh, it gets very hot. As your power tool draws energy, the thin wire inside your wall begins to heat up. It acts exactly like the glowing red coils inside a toaster.
Oh my God, inside a wooden wall.
Yes. The breaker never trips because it thinks everything is operating safely within its 20-amp limit. But meanwhile, the wire is melting its plastic insulation and literally igniting the wooden framing of your house.
And because it's behind drywall, you wouldn't even see the smoke until the fire had already spread up into the ceiling? That is deeply unsettling. What about the color matching? You mentioned that's another area where people go wrong.
Right, the classic reversed hot and neutral connections. So black is usually hot, carrying the power, and white is neutral, providing the return path back to the panel.
Okay, simple enough.
Right, but if a DIYer wires an outlet backward and reverses those, the terrifying part is that a lamp plugged into that outlet will still turn on perfectly fine. The circuit still completes. So the homeowner thinks they did a perfect job.
But they didn't.
They absolutely didn't. Because in many fixtures, like a standard light bulb socket, the wiring is designed so that only the tiny metal tab at the very bottom of the socket is hot.
Oh, the little piece way down in the center.
Right. And the metal threading around the sides, the part the bulb actually screws into, is supposed to be neutral.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. If you reverse the wiring at the outlet, that large metal threading is now constantly energized with lethal voltage. The second you reach in to change a light bulb, and your finger accidentally brushes those threads, the electricity uses you as the return path. You literally become the grounding wire.
Wow. Okay, so the mechanical risks are huge. But surely there are simpler things, right? Like just grouping wires together in a junction box. I've seen people just shove a bunch of splice wires into a plastic box in the wall just to keep them tidy.
Oh, man. You're talking about box fill calculations, and this is another rule that DIRs ignore completely. You cannot just stuff as many wires into a junction box as will physically fit.
You can't. I thought the box was just there to hold them.
No, the electrical code dictates a precise mathematical formula for how much empty airspace must remain inside that box.
Wait, why does empty air matter if the wires are all wrapped in electrical tape or wire nuts?
Because electricity generates heat. When multiple wires are carrying current, they need ambient airspace to dissipate that heat safely.
Ah, so they need to breathe.
Exactly. If you cram 10 wires into a tiny box, the heat becomes trapped. The ambient temperature inside that confined plastic box skyrockets, the wire insulation degrades over time, and eventually it arcs.
Just spontaneously arcs.
Yep. And if that box doesn't have a cover on it, which is another super common DIY fail, that arc shoots a spark straight into the dust and insulation inside your wall cavity.
All right, you've completely convinced me that the physical mechanics of electricity are terrifying. So here is my workaround.
Let's hear it.
I know my limits, right? I won't do it myself. Instead, I'll use the owner-builder exemption to pull the permit in my own name, but I'll just hire my neighbor who is super handy to actually do the work. I just pay him cash. It's way cheaper than a professional company.
Oh, I hear this all the time. This is a massive, massive trap that catches homeowners constantly.
Why? It's my house, my permit.
Because in California, there's something known as the $1,000 rule. Anyone you hire to perform electrical work must hold a valid C10 electrical contractor license if the total cost of the project exceeds $1,000.
But wait, I'm just paying my neighbor for his time. Like, a few hours of work isn't going to hit $1,000 in cash.
It's not just his time, though. The law explicitly states the $1,000 threshold applies to the combined cost of labor and materials.
Wait, so if I buy a new electrical panel for like $800 from a supply house, I can only pay my neighbor $200 before he suddenly needs a state license.
That is the exact math. You hit that $1,000 threshold almost instantly on any meaningful electrical project.
That's crazy.
Well, the state intentionally designed it this way. They want to prevent homeowners from routing around the licensing system by acting as basically general contractors for their unlicensed friends. And here is the real kicker. Paying your neighbor under the table doesn't cleverly bypass the requirement. It just means you are breaking the law.
I mean, realistically, though, unless the building inspector asks for my neighbor's tax returns, how would they even know?
Sure, the building inspector might not catch it. But the real danger isn't the city. It's liability.
Liability, like getting sued.
Exactly. If you bring in paid help without a license, the state of California views you as their employer, which means you take on full workers' compensation obligations.
Oh, man, I didn't even think of that.
Right. So if your neighbor falls off a ladder in your garage or gets severely shocked while messing with your panel, you can be held entirely liable for his medical bills, his lost wages, rehabilitation. That is a completely separate legal issue from contractor licensing, and honestly, a single hospital stay can financially ruin you.
Yeah, one ambulance ride, and I'm bankrupt. So the buddy system is a total myth, financially speaking. But what if I really do it all by myself? Just me pulling wire on a Saturday. I'm only paying for materials, so I'm saving a fortune.
Well, on a spreadsheet, sure, yes. A few outlets and some Romex wire might cost $50. But you really have to factor in the true cost of failure.
The cost of failure.
Yeah, let's just walk through the reality of a failed inspection. You do the work, you close up the drywall, the city inspector comes out, and he takes one look at your box fill calculations or your wire gauges and flat out fails you. Now what?
I guess I have to tear the wall back open.
Yep. You smash the brand new drywall open. You redo the wiring, just hoping you understand the code better this time. You pay a contractor to patch, texture, and paint the wall a second time. You pay the city for a second permit and a reinspection fee.
Oh, they charge you twice?
Oh, yeah, they definitely charge for reinspections. And very often, after failing 2 or 3 times, the homeowner's frustration boils over and they finally just hire a licensed professional to come fix the mess anyway.
So you end up paying for everything twice.
Exactly. You've paid for materials, multiple permit fees, drywall repair, and ultimately professional labor. You didn't save a dime. You just wasted 3 weekends of your life. Whereas a licensed electrician does a panel swap or a room rewire in one visit because they deal with the code every single day.
That makes total sense. We also need to talk about the insurance risk because the sources we're looking at highlight this as a silent killer for home equity. Let's say you do the DIY work perfectly. You follow the code, the wire gauges are right, but you just skip pulling the permit to avoid the hassle. The absence of that permit can actually invalidate your homeowner's insurance down the road, right?
It is the ultimate hidden consequence. Let's say a fire starts in your home 5 years later. It might not even be your electrical work that caused it.
Could just be a bad toaster.
Right. But when the insurance adjusters investigate, and trust me, they will investigate deeply, they pull the permit history of your house. If they find newly run circuits or a new panel that has no corresponding permit on file with the city, they have grounds to deny the claim.
Just because of the missing paperwork.
Yes, because they will argue that the undocumented, uninspected work altered the risk profile of the home. You paid premiums for years, only to have your policy voided when you needed it most, all because you wanted to save a few $100s on permit fees.
That's devastating. If the insurance drops you or a fire starts, the stakes are just too high. So where's the line? Like if a homeowner wants to improve their house, what is actually on the safe DIY list?
Okay, so the safest tasks are lower-risk surface-level replacements. We're talking about swapping an existing light fixture for a new one, replacing a standard outlet or a light switch with a like-for-like replacement, or running low-voltage wire like the thin cables used for a smart doorbell or garden landscape lighting.
Okay, simple stuff.
Right. Those are generally safe, provided you turn off the breaker first and absolutely verify the power is dead using a non-contact voltage tester. Don't just guess.
Right. Okay, so that is the green light list. What is on the absolute do not touch list?
Anything involving your main electrical panel. Adding completely new circuits that require a fresh permit and load calculations, whole house rewires, and absolutely anything in a wet location near water like pools or bathrooms. The panel work in particular is where DIYers get seriously hurt.
Wait, why the panel? If I flip the massive main breaker at the top to the off position, isn't the whole metal box completely dead?
No. And that is a fatal assumption. When you switch off the main breaker, yes, you cut power to the individual circuits in your house. But the main lugs, the heavy, thick wires coming straight in from the utility meter on the street, those stay fully energized.
Wait, really? They are always live.
Always live. If you are reaching into that panel with a metal screwdriver to add a new breaker, and your hand slips and touches those main lugs, you take the full, unfused force of the neighborhood grid. It is an extreme shock risk.
That is terrifying, which is literally why companies like Copperfield Electric exist. Because they are the ones driving around Orange County fixing these exact weekend warrior disasters before someone gets hurt.
Exactly. When you hit that do not touch list, you really need a licensed professional who carries their own insurance, their own bonds, and workers' comp.
And looking at Copperfield's guidelines here, they are built exactly for this. They are a family-owned, licensed 24-hour electrician service. Their license number is 1094740, by the way, and they serve all of Southern California.
Yeah, they have a massive service area.
They do. Their head office is in Tustin, but their teams are constantly deployed in Irvine, Anaheim, Santa Ana, Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Mission Viejo. I mean, anywhere in the OC, they basically cover it.
And you know what stands out about their approach? It's the honest diagnosis.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a homeowner might look at flickering lights and panic, right? Thinking they need to tear down the walls for a $15,000 whole house rewire. But Copperfield's technicians actually evaluate the real scope of the problem.
So they don't just upsell you.
Exactly. They might look at it and realize, actually the wiring is fine. We just need to add whole home surge protection. Or, hey, we just need to replace this specific aluminum wiring in this one problematic room. They diagnose what truly exists, which prevents you from buying materials you don't need or pulling permits for the wrong scope of work.
That's huge. And they also handle new construction wiring, complex panel upgrades, and they do a massive amount of EV charger installations, which is something you absolutely cannot DIY unless you want to melt your garage.
Please do not DIY an EV charger.
Yeah, bad idea. Plus, they offer emergency after-hours rapid response because a sparking panel doesn't wait until 9 a.m. on a Monday to catch fire.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So what does this all mean? Let's wrap up our core takeaways here. Yes, under California law, the owner-builder exemption legally allows you to wire your own house if it is your primary residence. But that legal permission slip does not remove the rigid code inspections, the necessity of pulling permits, or the intense physical dangers of electricity.
It really doesn't.
And you cannot use unlicensed buddies without taking on massive workers' comp liability. The hidden costs of a failed inspection or a denied insurance claim vastly outweigh the perceived savings of just doing it yourself.
I completely agree. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, and it draws on something the source material mentions regarding older homes.
Oh, yeah. The older homes are a whole different beast.
They are. Many people living in pre-1960s homes think their electrical system is perfectly safe simply because, well, the lights still turn on every time they flip the switch. They have no idea what is actually inside their walls. They don't realize that behind the little metal door in their hallway, they might still be relying on an outdated fuse box instead of a modern circuit breaker panel.
You mean those old glass screw-in fuses with the tiny wire inside?
That's exactly what I mean. Which raises a chilling question for anyone living in an older property. Are you currently trusting your family's physical safety, your home's structural integrity, and your insurance policy to a 60-year-old screw-in fuse?
Wow. Put like that, it's pretty scary.
It is. A piece of technology that was designed before the invention of the microwave, let alone high-draw modern electronics, heat pumps, and electric vehicles. Electricity doesn't age, but the safety mechanisms containing it certainly do. If you aren't absolutely sure what is behind that metal door, it might be time to put down the DIY tools, stop guessing, and give Copperfield Electric a call.